I am Vinnie Tortorich. Folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. Yeah, everything reminds me of a song, and boy, today, Lunatic Fringe. There is no better song to describe what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to say right from the top before I introduce my guest, as anyone who's ever listened to this podcast knows, I don't do politics. And I ain't doing politics today. It's not going to happen. But we're going to skirt around it because no matter how you talk about this subject, people will let politics bleed into their brain because of it. We got some nasty stuff happening out there, folks. It's just nasty. Wow. I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime. But here we are. We're shooting each other. We're shooting kids in churches. We're killing people. We're killing executives because we don't like their policies of the insurance companies they run. And more so than that, more so than the sick human beings who will shoot through the stained glass window of a church at second graders, are gonna man down from behind. Haven't these assholes seen Westerns? You never shoot a man from behind. That's the most cowardly thing you could do as a human being, is to walk up behind someone and shoot them. Coward. No other word for it. Sorry, Luigi. Won't say your last name because just like my guest today, we don't want to give you guys any more hero status than the assholes around you are giving you, which is my second problem. People are cheering these people on. A man shoots someone in the back, you cheer him on. A coward shoots through a stained glass window of a church and kills babies. And people are on the internet going, I guess prayer didn't help them. Really? Really? And then Charlie Kirk. Well, you know what? I've had enough. And like I said, we're not going into politics. I don't care if you're on the right, left, or middle. I don't care what you do, but we got to stop this. Everyone talking, oh, we got to lower the temperature. I hear everybody talking about lowering the temperature. Every time we hear lower the temperature, what happens? Another shooting. Another coward. Okay? We're going to talk to someone. She's been on the show before. She knows a lot about these types of things. I love this woman. I'd have her on every week if she was available. I'm talking about none other than Dr. Lisa Strohman. How you doing, Lisa?
I'm great. Thanks for having me back.
Lisa, I'm sorry about the yelling, but I'm worked up here. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm a bit worked up here. You've seen what's going on. Like I said, when I saw the insurance guy, he got shot in the back. Let's start with that.
Right.
The most cowardly thing you can possibly do is just shoot someone in the back. And then you have women saying, I want to marry this man. That's what's going on. Right? And let's take it all the way to Charlie Kirk. I mean, his body wasn't cold yet. And the internet went straight to pew, pew in the neck. I guess you got what you deserve. Got what you deserve? Lisa, I don't know. I didn't know much about Charlie Kirk. I knew he existed. I knew he was a right winger. I knew that he spoke to kids. I'd heard that, he helped Trump win an election. I knew what the average person, I didn't really know anything. Now I know who he is, right? And I got to be honest, people are calling him a racist, a misogynist, or this or that. I can't find the video of him being any of that. Maybe he is, and I'm just not seeing the right videos. I just don't know. But what I do know is that someone cowardly shot him from 200 yards away. The man didn't have a chance. As bad as as bad as being shot in the back, I guess. And then people are immediately online. Yeah, what's going on? What am I missing?
I don't think you're missing anything. I think we can all agree. We're not at a place where we accept now ideological differences. I've really spent my career looking at, how are we as humans to one another? And I think that the biggest issue to me is that we should all agree that someone losing their life is a horrendous act, and that another at the hand of someone else that seemingly feels justified, to me leads right back into the area I've spent 25 years working on since the day Columbine happened, which is social media and online platforms are like an echo chamber, and they silo people's thoughts, and they funnel in information that emboldens and enforces. And it has absolutely divided our country, and it absolutely has allowed these individuals to go into these repositories of all I can call as evil. And we don't have a way to stop it, because the industry themselves, the tech industry, even though they have the tools to do that, refuse to do that because they are actually rewarded and they are actually given more money when we have social divisiveness. And that to me is an absolutely broken system. And that's why it keeps happening.
So let's talk about that. I guess that's a good place to start. Let's start with the platforms, right? I guess we're talking TikTok, X, YouTube. Where are these people living mostly? Where are they congregating? I guess. Help me.
I mean, it's all of them. I mean, it's certainly in all of them that they go to. Reddit has some, 4chan, you've got Discord, anywhere that you can go on and have conversations, you will find good and evil in existence. And the issues are that in the United States, we have the First Amendment, and we have the right and the ability to say what we want. And what a gracious country that is, and how amazing that is for us. But I also think that you have to look at what cost is that, and what are the limits that we allow? Are we allowing hate speech on our platforms? Are we allowing terroristic threats to occur on our platforms? Are we allowing the projected communication of who I want to go and kill because that person doesn't agree with us? Is there some limit there? Do we have the ability to have discourse on that? And can we have some sort of band that comes together that where we protect each other from having to be indoctrinated with some of that evil language and communications that are occurring out there?
You mentioned Discord. What is Discord? I keep hearing Discord over and over. I didn't know that existed before the day before Charlie Kirk was murdered. I'd never heard that term. What is it? Is it another TikTok? Is it more like Reddit? What am I missing?
It's a gaming chat platform. So Discord is one. It's like an outside entity that attaches to gaming platforms, and it really is just kind of open source. You can create your own servers. You can have things that you talk to other people that have like minds, that have like interests, all of those things. So kind of similar to Reddit in that respect, except that it's typically attached to the gaming world.
Okay, gaming. Again, this keeps coming up now, right? I've been watching the news. I'm interested in learning,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hearing words. I knew what a furry was before this, right? I'd heard that term before. I was interested in the last shooter who shot, the guy who murdered Charlie Kirk. He had different things written on each shell casing in the gun. And the words didn't make any sense to me, but I was told, it was explained to me that, oh, this is language that they use in the gaming community. I thought gaming was a bunch of nerds. I'm just being honest, right? Just a bunch of nerds who sit in their basement and play games on the computer against other people in other basements. But they're not just playing games. What's going on? I know this makes me sound like an idiot, but I don't know. I'm ignorant to these facts.
Well, gaming is a social platform. And so, interestingly, the amplification that occurred during COVID was a lot of people jumped onto gaming that perhaps maybe as a teenager were playing as kids. The biggest push into gaming at the time during COVID were actually moms in that age, which probably were home with their kids trying to find something to do. But gaming is a very diverse crowd. It has billions of dollars wrapped up into it. There's sporting gaming, there's violent gaming, there's just fun gaming. There's a lot of different things that you would classify as gaming. And so it isn't really nerds in the basement anymore. It's our population at whole. And people are finding different facets that interest them to be a part of it. Attached to that is introduction to people that aren't necessarily in our cultural system that naturally or organically, like I grew up, I didn't have cell phones when I was a kid. So, I would just know the kids in the neighborhood. But what today's society on such a digital world allows us to is globally, we can go out and we pick up information, we pick up all of these different things that are happening online. And, you see one shooter take on the ability to carve into their projectiles. And now you have another one, and now you have another one, right? So the dissemination of kind of how do we one-upsmanship is disseminated through those channels, just like any other town hall. So this is kind of the public square online, and we have to really think through, how is that protected in First Amendment speech, and how do we actually regulate, if we need to, this component that is actually facilitating ongoing violence that occurs over and over again.
Yeah, and it seems like there's a lot of Me Too happening there. The aforementioned. Well, there was a guy who shot at Trump at the rally this summer, right before the event. I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, and here I'll do it to you. Answer this question as quickly as you can, okay? And the audience can play along. I'm asking you, Lisa, who shot Lincoln?
On the shooter?
Yeah, who shot President Lincoln in the theater?
Now you're asking me for history on the end of my day. I want to say it's like Boots, or I can't.
Yeah, Booth, John Wilkes Booth.
Okay.
Right. Who shot Kennedy? The first Kennedy. Oswald. Mm-hmm. Right. Who shot President Trump?
I wouldn't
can't come up with the name. Mm-hmm. I went to 1865. I went to 1961 or 62 or 63, maybe 63, one of those years. Mm-hmm. And you were able to come up with both names. Mm-hmm. Who shot Trump? No idea. And I'm telling you, everyone watching this podcast right now is on their phone going, who did shoot Trump, mm-hmm. right?
I can see the picture. I can see the face.
Yeah, we can see. Yeah, we see. We know what he looks like. The whole deal. But that's where we are in history, right? That's where we are. We can tell you who shot presidents 50 years ago. We could tell you who shot a president 150 years ago, but we can't tell you who shot a president last summer. Right? As a matter of fact, we could find more people who can tell you that he didn't really get shot. It just hit his ear. We're not even sure it hit his ear. Right? It's like, that's where we are in the world. It's like they're pretending this is like, okay, this is okay. And I think it was just today that the second guy who tried to shoot him, who, was in the bushes, and they found that guy, and he represented himself, which tells you everything you need to know. He was just found guilty. Mm-hmm. All of this stuff is going on. This stuff is happening so fast that you can't even keep up with it anymore.
Yeah.
The only reason we know Luigi's first and last name is because he's so damn good looking, and he has women around the world who want to marry him.
Reminds me of Ted Bundy, or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ted Bundy was one of those guys. I mean, the guy murdered and gruesomely murdered women. Mm-hmm. And there were women who wanted to marry him. Tex Watson. You remember that name? You
Yeah.
might be too young for that one.
I don't know. That one escapes me.
Tex Watson was the guy who carried out the Tate LaBianca murders for
Manson.
Manson.
Okay.
Okay. He was the one. He went in there with Squeaky Fromm and that group, and they went in and they cut, Sharon Tate was 7 months pregnant. They cut the baby out of the mother and stabbed the baby. He sired 3 or 4 kids from prison.
Oh, gosh.
This is where we are in our society. That man should have died. Manson should have died. They're talking about letting Squeaky and the gang out. I think some of them have been let out by now, right? We're turning the murderers into heroes. I had celebrity clients. I wish I was making this one up. God, I wish I was making this one up. Sharon Tate's husband, you know who he was or who he is?
No, I don't.
He's a guy named Roman Polanski.
Oh, the child. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let me let the audience know what Roman Polanski did. He raped, well, let me go back. He drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl anally. I wish I was making that up, folks. Might have to put a warning on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
He anally raped, he drugged and then anally raped. There were other actors there that night. The guy's name is Roman Polanski. Instead of standing trial, he fled. He fled to Europe. He continued to make movies in Europe. If you go ask people in the Hollywood community, they would say, we don't understand why Roman Polanski can't come back to the United States without having to stand trial.
Wow.
They've been saying that. I was in the Hollywood community for 30 some odd years. There are people, big stars, who are going, what's the big deal? Let him back in. That was so long ago. Really? He raped a 13-year-old girl anally after drugging her. Okay? They're okay with him. As a matter of fact, I think a few years ago, because Roman just went to Europe and just kept doing movies, just kept making movies. A couple of years ago, he was honored at the Oscars. I cannot make this up. Okay. And we can't figure out what's wrong with the world today. People, oh, come on, let Roman. It's been long enough. Right? Yet, we went through the whole Me Too movement and we found everyone else. I mean, what he did was as bad as what the comedian did, Mr. Jello Pudding. I can't think of his name right now.
Cosby.
Probably. What Roman did was just as bad.
Yeah, most prolific sexual offenders in our history.
Yeah. And he's out, by the way. He's out now. Why? I don't know. That guy should not be walking the streets, but he's out, right?
Mm-hmm.
We put the other guy in jail, the big producer, for doing less than Roman Polanski.
Yep.
He's never getting out. But Roman Polanski, just let him back in. He's fine. I wish I could tell you the actors and actresses that have told me over dinner, let him back in. Makes no sense, right?
No.
That's where we are. If people aren't held accountable, we end up with Luigi, Tyler, and Robinson. First names of all 3 of the people that we're talking about today. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not as interested in them as I am in the people who go online after someone like Charlie Kirk is killed and dance and cheer and go, yeah, this needed to happen. What say you?
You know, I think there's a myriad of issues that cause that. I think that people generally do have a sense of needing to belong. I think that they try to jump into current events and want to like weigh in, and it's quote unquote safe for them to weigh in because that's how the social media world has been built. It puts you into a silo, which is reverberating everything that you think is accurate. And, if your listeners want to go on and find some really interesting data, is to go on to Pew Research did a study on how divided we are as a country. They've done it politically, they've done it, through ideologies. But the minute that you see that social media takes hold and starts to get thrown out there, we completely go in opposite polar directions. I remember when I first voted at 18 that our country, we talked to each other. Even if you had differing opinions, we were able to empathetically and curiously, have dialogue with one another. Like, how did you get to that opinion? Or why do you feel that way? And this is how I feel. And we would say often, like, we can agree to disagree, right? We didn't hate each other. We didn't like amplify violence or this kind of dehumanization of an us versus them mentality. But that's what I feel like our biggest issue is now as a country.
And I won't say which is which, but both of my parents are still alive. And one of my parents is a Democrat. The other one's a Republican. Mm. And oddly enough, they both believe exactly the same thing because they're old school Democrat and old school Republican. Mm-hmm. When in fact, what the Democrats used to talk about 50 years ago is what the Republicans are talking about now, and vice versa. It's almost like the whole thing is switched, right? It's like the whole thing is just switched to the other side, which makes no sense to me whatsoever.
That's algorithms, right? That's what they're intending to do.
So is there any way to get that toothpaste back in the tube?
I truly, and again, you've known me a long time, like I'm an optimist and I believe in investing in our youth and our children. We at Digital Citizen Academy, we have that technology leadership council where I actually go out and say to the kids, hey, you have more power than anyone in history. Your generation, if it came together and wanted difference and they wanted it to be a different society moving forward, all you have to do is create a voice where you come together and you listen to one another. And nobody could, at that point, take them off of their mission to create a loving, honest, open society together. And so it really, to me, goes back to that. How do we invest in our youth? How do we commit to them that we understand you should have a right to have privacy, but you should also have a right to understand what the rules are and that how they're building these systems are meant to keep you isolated, confused, angry. And that's the part that makes money. So if you teach them that part, they actually come forward and say, all right, you know what? That's not the future I want to have. Because who wants to live in a world where actually standing up for something you might believe in could cause you to be shot or to be hurt or to be attacked? Nobody truly wants that for themselves.
Yeah, I left a coffee shop a couple of weeks ago. There's a place in town here. I don't know if you know this, Lisa, but I own a little boutique coffee thing, purecoffeeclub.com. And there's a couple of roasters here in Charlottesville, and they roast fresh all the time. And I stop by and buy a half pound here and there to try what they're doing. I find out which beans they have. I find out when they were roasted. And I come home and play around with them because I always want to find stuff for my company. And when I go there, there's always a sign up that says we're hiring, right? So apparently they're always looking for people to get hired in. And I'm not going to cast anything in any direction, but the kids that are there they look like early 20s, this type of thing. You see a lot of hair that's not of natural colors, like colors you don't see in nature. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's that. There's a lot of nose rings, a lot of hoop gauges in the ears. You get what I'm talking about here, right? It's like, these are not, I always say when I see a lot of tattoos on the face, when I see hoop earrings, when I see nose rings, I'm looking at that going, you're not going to be a lawyer or a doctor, right? You're not going down that path. Not that there's anything wrong with coloring your hair or putting tattoos on your face or anything else, but you're not conforming to where you could get what would be considered a normal job. I'm sorry. The best you could do is slinging coffee, probably. But I was in there, and they give you this place. They give you a card. So after you buy like 10 pounds of coffee, they give you a free pound or whatever. So I hand the girl my card. She can see that I'm a frequent flyer because I said, ma'am, I said, I gotta be honest with you. I said, by the way, when was this last batch of coffee roasted? And she goes, I don't know. She's got the vocal fry. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Maybe yesterday. I said, yeah, because I bought a half a pound last week, and I used it in my espresso. The beans were really dried out, and instead of going, oh no, that's not what we do here. Let me talk to my manager. Let me get you another half a pound, or let me talk to him or whatever. I said, the last thing I got wasn't any good. And she just stood and stared at me. She looked right through me as if to say, please just go away. Please go away. Please do not speak to me. Our transaction is done here. Please. And I said, so that coffee was not really good. And she never said another word. She just stared at me as if to say, go away. She couldn't have this is who they have in the front. This is who they have meeting the public. She couldn't have a conversation. She couldn't say, oh my God, let me see what I can do about that. Let me call the manager over. Maybe you could talk to him. Nothing. She spoke volumes with her eyes. I don't know what to do. They didn't tell me what to do if someone asked anything other than put your card there, because they don't even have to exchange money, right? It's tap, 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 and then you go away, right?
Right.
I'm seeing this more and more. Do you see it? I mean, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you see it where you live?
I see it in the entire generation. I actually did some media where I was on a national channel, and they asked me to do this segment on the Gen Z stare. And, I got attacked online for the opinions I said. And I just said, we are outsourcing our critical thinking and our humanistic response to one another. And the fact that, and they played clips, which of course on this channel, I couldn't see any of the clips that they showed. So I wasn't really sure what they were kind of showing beforehand, but it really is this stare back as if you're the idiot and the customer, and that they're not going to, that they're managing that with a non-response. And I thought about it a lot after I did that segment. And I thought, is it that we are just culturally shifting so quickly with the advent of technology and giving kids devices at such young ages that we have lost the art of conversation, have lost the art of just pleasant dialogue and thinking critically in the moment? Are you quick on your feet versus my job is this, I'm going to do this, and it's rote every day, and I'm happy doing that. And if that's what they love to do and that's what they want to do, then that's fantastic. But I question whether or not, do they know that there's more? Are we doing a really good job at presenting and affording some sort of example for this youth to see that there's things that you can reach for and create and do in your lifetime? So that's it, to me, that's an open question. And I think that it's something that we have to really, as a society, think through. Because even now, more so with AI and the ability to just type in and say, hey, how do I answer this guy who says his coffee's old? At right. Some point that might be an AirPod that they have in. And when you're saying those things, they don't know how to answer. It feeds them the line that they should be, kicking back at you. I mean, it's quite possible we just actually lose that entirety.
Well, I walked away from this kid feeling sad. My wife, I joke, everyone around me calls me Gran Torino, and I'm only 63 years old, right? I shouldn't be Gran Torino at all, right?
Right.
But my wife says, every time you leave the house, you come back shaking your head and you're disappointed, right? And about the only place I go where I'm not disappointed is there's this old timey style hardware store in town. It's a mom and pop that I try to go to whenever. I try not to go to Lowe's or Home Depot if I don't have, unless I know that they won't have it. And I'll still go there and check because they're about my age. The youngest person working there might be 50. And I know that when I go in and say, I went in the other day and I needed some silicone caulking for something I was working on at the house. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. And I was like, silicone caulking. Yes, sir. 2 aisles down, take a left. It's going to be right there on your right. Look up. You want the one on the top because that's the one. Right? You're going to love that one. Okay. That's a guy who knows, right? He was Johnny on the spot. He was happy to help, right? He knew where the caulking was. Yeah. I'm in the coffee shop. By the way, here's the crazy part. The coffee shop right next door to the hardware store. They're right next door to each other, right? And you walk out of there and you go next door, and I feel sorry for the girl. And I never knew about this stare. I want you to talk more about this stare if you have any more information, because I walked out of there feeling for this kid. I said, what's her life like when she leaves here? She looks like she hasn't seen sun in years. She was pasty white, somewhat out of shape, right? Had some weight to lose. Like I said, tattoos, what have you, and nose rings, colored hair. And I'm like, okay, she's crying out for something. I'm sure her parents said, you can stay here in the basement, but you got to get a job. I'm sure that the parents are trying. And I'm not sure it's the parents' fault. Maybe it is the parents' fault. I don't know. I don't know how that works, right? I was lucky. My daughter went to college and she's an attorney now. So I don't know how it works when you have the other kind of kid. What am I missing? How do you get to the 1,000-yard stare person versus my daughter who's at a law firm in New York now?
Well, I think that you have to recognize, I guess for me in psychology, I have to recognize that those are choices. So I don't necessarily think that I would feel sorry for the girl, because this is a subculture group that exists and all reflect one another. Right. So I suspect that she's friends with other people that have gauge earrings and various color hair and all of the things. And most of the time if you have a dialogue with them, and I would encourage you to have one with this person and ask them, hey, like, how did this start for you? What does this have? Just be curious at like where they got there. But most of the time, those individuals, when I have conversations with them, they're revolting against the world of being, going to school and taking on debt and trying to go work for the man and corporate America. And so there's a very huge divide in this culture where you see a lot of these individuals are like, they don't care about driving or owning a car. They don't care about ever having a house of their own. They're pretty content at kind of just following through in life. And it's definitely, I don't even know if we can say that it's upbringing. I think it truly is. And I'll to the day I die will argue that TikTok is devastating the minds of our children, as is the other social platforms. But when you look at the TikTok platforms in mainland China, which is under a totally different name, they're feeding their youth content that is uplifting and intelligent and creative and creating better citizens through it. And they're feeding our institutions like gunk over gunk over gunk. That's what I see as the issue. And obviously that's my bias because I work in that space, but right. I don't necessarily see, the same thing happened to me when I went to a conference in Seattle. And I was really taken aback about like how just kind of different, the people that were working up there were than, say the folks where I live. And so it was just quite interesting to me. And I was asking the questions, when did this start? How did it start? All of those kind of things. Why did you choose, pink fuchsia as a hair color? So I just, to me, a lot of it has to do with like what they're getting fed And to me, that Gen Z stare is what they're kind of calling it, is really about somebody looking at you like, what, what, are you dull? Like, are you, they don't agree with you and they don't know how to have a conversation about it. So, somebody came up and said, I wanted iced coffee, and they get up to the window at this, a drive-through or whatever. And the lady's like, I said that I wanted iced coffee. The ice is melted. And the person just stares at them back like,
Right.
There was ice in it, and now, or whatever it was. So, it's just, it's interesting to me that their reaction is just to shut down and close out, rather than dialogue about it or have any understanding about what is customer service. To me, I grew up, the customer's always right.
Right.
But I don't think that the training or that exists anymore today.
Well, and I also think, because when I got in the car, I called my buddy. I was on a phone call with him. This guy's not my buddy. He works for me. So we were in the middle of a conversation about work. And I went in and did that and came back out. And I got back on the phone and I said, you're not going to, I told him what I told you. I said, you're not going to believe it just happened. It's like this one. And he goes, Vin, do you realize that you're a 60-something-year-old man, you're white, and they're told to hate you? When you walk in, they have, he's like, you're not just looking at them with their hair and everything else. They're looking at you. He said to me, what are you wearing right now? I said, what do you mean, what am I wearing? He goes, how are you dressed right now? I said, I don't know. Got a button-down shirt on, like just a shirt with buttons. Got a pair of Levi's on. He goes, what's on your feet? I said, well, I wear cowboy boots. He goes, yeah, you're John Wayne to them. You're exactly what they're told to hate. You're exactly what, you're looking at them, judging. They're looking at you going, oh, you're the devil. So walking in, they don't want to see you, right? How dare you be able to walk in and buy a half pound of coffee at 3 p.m? How dare you, right? You represent something they don't think they will ever get, which was, I never thought of it that way. I'm always trying to see myself. Where am I in the world? How am I interjecting in the world, right? And it might be over with for me and you, right? It might be over with for us because they look at us as, wait, you got regular clothes on, you look like you conform, don't want to have anything to do with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sad that we have that mindset exists, because for me, I guess I go out and I look at humans. It makes me so sad to hear stories of racism or political corruptness or, any sort of ideological differences, like making somebody get thought of as less than. And I try my very best to really kind of understand and put myself in the shoes of like having conversation and dialogue, or trying to create some sort of relationship to break that down. Because if we go through and carry that mindset, and your friends telling you, they're who you taught to hate and all of the things, the only thing that breaks that is to prove them wrong, right? If that's true. I don't know if it's true, but if it is true, then the only thing you can do is show kindness and empathy and love for a fellow human being and break that down, so that we actually are starting to come together as a society, instead of just kind of going into our corners as we are and pretending like we can never fix that. That to me is a travesty if we get there.
Yeah, but I don't think we're very far from that right now. Let me take a quick break here, folks. Villa Capelli olive oil. I've been talking about this stuff for years, but I always mention, before they ever paid me a dime, we talked about Villa Capelli. It's 100% pure olive oil. You're not getting, in this country, you could cut olive oil up to 40% and still call it pure olive oil. I wish they would change that. If RFK wants to do something, do that. Go after that. Go get it, folks. Villa Capelli. Put in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE. You'll save 10% every single time at Villa Capelli. Let them know we sent you. Promo code Vinnie, VINNIE. Villa Capelli olive oil is pure, it's delicious. You want it in your belly. Go get it right now and let them know we sent you. We're talking to Dr. Lisa Strohman. Speaking of, I mentioned RFK, and I know he's a bit of a lightning rod for several reasons, and I get it. But just today, we're recording this, folks, on the 23rd on a Tuesday. Something came out where they're saying, hey, just maybe, I don't know if you saw this yet, Lisa, it's kind of brand new. Just maybe acetaminophen could cause autism. It might not. We don't know. But they're saying if you're a pregnant woman, you might want to stay away from acetaminophen. That it's Tylenol, right? They're looking at that. Now, if I were pregnant, well, I don't want to get into the biological woman conversation, but let's say I was a biological woman and I was pregnant and I heard that, the last thing I would take during my pregnancy would be Tylenol. And quickly, a while later, I went online to see what was going on. And the first thing I see on X is a pregnant woman pouring Tylenol out and dancing around, putting it in her mouth, drinking it, and flipping it off the camera. Okay. Who are you hurting, right? Did you need to take a drug right at that time? Were you doing it just to flip off Trump and his administration? How dumb, right? Who would take acetaminophen unless they really had to? And by the way, there are other things you could do for pain management. There's aspirin, and there's, every non-steroidal anti-inflammatory in the world before you get to acetaminophen. Yet these women are now flipping off the camera and dancing around, taking drugs because they hate Donald Trump. And I'm sitting there going, okay, could be true, might not be true. We don't know. But why would you take that chance?
See, I think that it's deeper than this actual issue on hand, in that we have replaced in our society true scientific information and knowledge through experts to influencers and attitude and their persuasion of like looking good for whomever it is that they're trying to show off to. It doesn't matter who, if there's science behind something, we should probably listen to that. And the fact that, I go out and I talk all the time and I say, hey, there is over 20 years of data that shows if you are on a screen doing something that is not cognitively building, like gaming, social media, I call it tech as a toy, not as a tool. And if you're using that for more than over 3 hours a day, which, by the way, the average American teenager is on over 9 hours a day, you're creating brain damage. We have scans of brains. We show it. We can see it. When I present that to the kids and I say, here's the science, here's a meta-analysis of 300 different studies that show it not only decimates your structure of your brain, it also decimates the hormonal and neurochemical parts of your brain. They're like, why has nobody told us this? Right? And they get offended. And that's how I'm lighting this young generation up. It's like, be understanding of what misinformation, disinformation is. Know how to look at a study. And if they tell you, this study shows that, if you brush your teeth with your left hand, your teeth are going to fall out. And it's an N of 1, there's no power behind that study. If you take 1 million people and you show that brushing your teeth with your left hand makes your teeth fall out, I'd probably listen to that. Right? Just using a silly example, but you've got to teach this generation and these people to follow the science. And I don't know, I didn't hear the study about the Tylenol, but the first thing I would do is not jump onto the media and do exactly what they're telling me and post it online. I would actually do my work and go in, and if I found evidence that was contrary to that, would try to bring that up for public discourse. Right? Here's a bunch of studies that say that that's not true, or it is true, whatever it is. But if we're taking the advice, or we're arguing against somebody because of their political persuasions or who they stand for in and out of our society, and we're not looking at science or pure data, that's a problem.
Well, look, I got to be honest with you. I've never been big on taking any medication whatsoever, unless I'm 63. I'm still on nothing. I've been through cancer twice, so I had to go on to chemo, which okay, it saved my life. I'm still here. I'm happy.
Mhm.
But sometime back in 2000 and no, it was 1991 or 92. I had a client in LA who used to love to go out and party. And this guy, he was an actor. He did a lot of coke. He did a lot of all the stuff that people did back then, and drank a lot. Well, something he did a couple of times was he figured out that he could drink a lot and not get a headache in the middle of the night by taking a lot of Tylenol. And what it did was it completely screwed up his liver.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when I went, okay, note to self. If drinking alcohol mixes with this and it screws up if it's that close to screwing up your liver, I'm never taking Tylenol ever again. Right. There's no reason for me. There's too many other things you can take if you're in pain, if you have a headache or you pull a muscle or whatever. You could take an aspirin or, Advil or whatever. Right. You don't need to take this stuff. So that's all it took for me to never take it again. But if they can connect it to autism, and look, we have a lot of autism, right? The rate of autism has gone up a lot. And one of the things they're looking at is this. Well, why not listen to it? Why thumb your nose at it? Why not go look and see?
Well, and that's
right?
the part. Yeah, you have to have the ability and the cognitive desire to understand the truth. And, your and I's friend, Dr. Drew, he and I have had conversations about this all the time. And I said, listen, I know you're a brilliant doctor and I know that you have all these specialties, but you're also a celebrity. And I was like, you can't have both. You can't, not in this society. Like, we're starting to lose the ability. And, I think with the Tylenol and the amount of ads we have on, I have colleagues that are from the UK and they were here this past week for a human trafficking conference we were at. And they said, I cannot believe the number of ads that you have as an American society on drugs that are being fed into your system. And the same thing, right? We're getting basically trained to think that if something's wrong with us, that we need a drug to solve that problem. And so we're sickening ourselves with these, constant influx of information. And I just thought it was quite interesting how they just saw it immediately on their first day in the States of how much we actually try to convince ourselves that if there's an issue, we have a drug that can solve that problem.
Yeah, I don't see commercials until football season comes around because, I watch. We don't have regular television here.
Mm-hmm.
We have whatever. We have Prime and Netflix and what have you. We don't have the thing. I was an early cable cutter back in early, I think 2009 or 10. We did it as an experiment. We never went back.
Mm-hmm.
But during football season, I buy into Sunday Ticket and the whole thing. So you're watching the games and you're watching the commercials. And I usually go nuts and I do shows about it. It's the little pill with the big story to tell, right? And they got people dancing around going, look at us. Now, I found out that when I first started the show around 2011, it's hard to believe it's been that long. Mm-hmm. We're at almost 3,000 episodes here. And the average person was on 4 or 5 medications, right? Whenever I would talk, I would get doctors and I was like, oh yeah, it's 5 medications. It's nothing. People, 5 medications. I had Dr. Trokalasian on a couple of weeks ago. He goes, 10 is now, the average American is on 10. And I believe that because I have a younger brother that's on like 12 or 13 or 14 medications, right?
Mm-hmm.
And losing weight is not what he's considering doing. The fact that he's got a stent in his heart, you would think that he would come to me and go, hey, bro, I need help. But he just thumbs his nose at it. He keeps going. And after Tro got off the air, I looked it up, and the average American is on 8 medications. Some people are on as many as, according to Tro, He's got patients that come to him. They're on as many as 20 medications. 20. So you sit there and you think about it, right? How is it that I can be on zero at 63? I'm going to be 63 at the end of this week. The day after the show comes out is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. I was fishing. Okay. Thank you. So I'm 63 in a few days. Where are my medications? Why am I not on medications, right? And you talk about the phone and the screen time, right? It might have been after you and I did our last show. It was about a year ago. I looked at my screen time. I think we talked about it. I looked at my screen time and I was at an hour and a half a day. And I went, okay, it's because I use my phone for work. I'm in the social media business. So, okay, an hour and a half a day, that's not so bad for a social media guy.
Right.
Well, about 2-3 months ago, I looked again. And that week I averaged 247.
Wow.
So, my company is growing. I'm doing more. The next week I checked and I was right at 3 hours. It was 259 average. So I went on a phone diet. So only going to use my phone when I absolutely have to. The first week I got down, I'm making up numbers, but they're about 57 minutes. And then the following week, I wanted to beat that, and I got it down to like 43 minutes. A few weeks later, I had it down to 23 minutes, but now I was actually cheating because I was running to my office to get on my computer to do the same work I was doing on my phone. So the average is under an hour. For a guy who does social media for a living, it's under an hour. I record, every time you turn this on to use it as a video camera or whatever, that counts as FaceTime. The fact that I just picked it up and my wife's picture came up, that shows as FaceTime, right? It's under an hour for a guy like me who does it for a living. And the national average, not for kids, just everyone, is 7 hours, which is sad because when you think that you work for 8 hours, you sleep for 8 hours, the rest of the time you're on the phone.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it is usurping our ability. And one of the more recent studies that came out, it actually found that, I mean, we know it jacks up serotonin and dopamine, like both of those creating anxiety and depression in people the more you're on it. But one of the more recent studies that came out in March was a meta-analysis, and it found that it also impacts oxytocin. So oxytocin is what we release at childbirth. Like it is a bonding hormone that we have that connects us to other human beings. And what we found now is that being on a device actually diminishes the oxytocin in your system, which leads to the loneliness, isolation. And that's where I think that we're getting like all of this kind of radicalization. Like if we don't have an ability to connect to another human, then why do we care? We're dehumanizing individuals as more important than our devices. And that has to stop. That has to end.
That makes more sense to me. I think the first time I had you on, Lisa, we were talking about, incels and this sort of thing. And turns out this last guy was an incel. I think all three of the last two guys, the school shooting and now Charlie Kirk shooter, both incels, or at least that's what they're saying about these guys. I don't know. Maybe the last guy, he did have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a boy that thought he was, I don't know. But I thought back then, I was like, I said to you, could it be the video games? Could it be? And you said, I don't know. You said maybe, right? You weren't sure about it, which I thought was interesting because everyone's going, it's those video games. And I get Lisa Strohman on and she goes, I don't know if it's the video games, but I can buy into the oxytocin idea a lot quicker. Folks, oxytocin is also, you don't just get it at birth. When you fall in love, you know how you're really in love with the guy or the girl for the first 4 or 5 months and all you can think about is them? That's oxytocin. And then you know how you hate each other's guts after that and you can't figure out why? That's the oxytocin calming down again. Did I get that right, Lisa?
Yeah. I don't know if I would have described it that way, but yeah, pretty close.
I know you've been with your husband since childhood, right? You guys met in high school or something?
Yeah, it was
Somewhere
13. Yeah.
13. I mean, that's crazy.
I know.
How many years have you guys been married?
Right now it was in 92, so we're 33 years in.
And you don't look old enough to, how old are your kids?
I have a freshman in college. She's 18, and I have a 17-year-old.
You don't look old enough to have either one of those. So whatever you're doing.
Hanging out with you.
No, just keep doing it. So yeah, it's got to be something to do with the chemicals in the brain to where, you take this last guy, and as soon as it happened, I said, okay, what kind of gun? And they said what it was. And I went, okay, you cannot buy that gun in the store. That was my first thing. My buddy Don called me. Hang on.
It's the billionaire Don Cunnington's Friday, 5 o'clock.
Whenever it's anything with guns, my buddy Don calls me. And he goes, this gun. Tell me about the gun. I went, okay, if that's the gun he used, can't buy it in the store. He goes, what do you mean? I said, that's a military gun. We have a lot of them in this country, although I don't think our country ever used that gun in military. It's usually made by the Czech Republic, and it's known. They make a lot of them. They're around the world. They make them for the Indian Army and this army. And everyone has them, right? Mm-hmm. They're crazy accurate, even though it's a mass-produced gun. Right. So these guys that shoot long distance, these guys that shoot guns out to a mile, they're building those guns from scratch. Those guns could cost $15,000, $20,000 or more. Right. They got big bold barrels. They got $6,000 scopes on them and the whole thing. And I said, okay, that guy, he knew what he was doing. Someone gave him that gun. He got that gun from somewhere. He didn't buy it from Dick's Sporting Goods. And I said, how far?
Grandfather's gun is what
turns out. So maybe his grandfather was in, I don't know, Korea or Vietnam, brought that gun back, right? A lot of guys smuggle guns back. That makes sense. Grandfather's gun. Now, my second question was, how far was the shot? And was it on the ground or was it on a building? It was on a building 200 yards. Okay. He had better than cheap, we call it glass, scopes. I said he didn't have cheap glass on that gun. He had to pay some money for that glass. He had to pay some money for that scope to get out to 200 yards, right? Because I said, and where did he hit Charlie Kirk? He goes, he hit him in the neck, right in the jugular. I said, okay, he probably had it scoped in right on Charlie's nose. He put it right in the middle of Charlie's face, and look how close he got, right? He put it on home plate and hit somewhere inside the park, right? When you talk about windage and you talk about the drop of the bullet, and I said, most of those guns are chambered in 30 cal. Turns out it was a 30-06. I said it was probably 308 or 30, 30 cal something. So from that distance, it's going to drop a bit. I was able to do that in 5 minutes before I knew anything about Charlie Kirk or anything else. I was able to say, this is what happened, right? Mm-hmm. My feeling, and maybe it's your feeling, this guy, we got one guy in custody. Do you feel like more people were involved in this? I think more people were involved because he knew what kind of gun to use. He somehow got the right scope on that gun. That gun was sighted in. You don't just screw a scope on top and go. You got to go to a range and sight it in and work with that gun to make sure you can do it. I don't believe that this guy acted alone. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard because, when I was interior and was able to hear all of the notes from law enforcement, as I worked as a visiting scholar with the FBI, and I was in a unit that, did, child abduction, serial killing. And I hesitate to say, because I think that you have to also consider the fact that you have the ability of individuals nowadays to go on YouTube and to train themselves and to get really, really proficient on things like how to scope a gun or how to, assemble a bomb or do all of these different things. And so it's harder nowadays, I think, to jump into the narrative that, this guy couldn't have done it by himself and he wouldn't have known it. I think that this generation is pretty proficient at going in and finding ways to figure out how to do things. So, I'm going to have to wait till the evidence comes out. I know a lot of people are jumping in and saying that there's no way. I sent immediately a message to one of my friends that worked for 15 years as a DOD sniper, and I said thoughts, and he wrote back and said looks like one of our own or something. So I know there's a lot of people that think that it was professional, and again, I guess you could believe that, but I am telling you right now, like the internet and the information that's on there, you can learn just about how to do anything, whether it's the best thing in the world to go out and be, a replica of Mother Teresa, or go all the way down and become, a secondary, Charles Manson. It's all there, for people to go in and look up. So, I think time will tell, and I think that we have to really truly get the information. And I'm grateful the fact that we have FOIA and the ability to go in and have free speech and look at records that we want to. So there's a lot more transparency nowadays that we're able to see as the American public, that if we want to go and find out more about, we can.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you called your friend, because the other thing I said to Don that day, when he said 200 yards, blah, 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 what do you think? This is Charlie Kirk. We didn't even know he was dead yet when I got that phone call, right? They hadn't even announced that. And I said, the first thing I said was, we didn't know the type of gun at that point. We just knew it was 200 yards away. The first thing I said was military trained, bottom line. And then when I found out he wasn't military trained, I said, okay, he was trained with a gun, as a civilian. Like I'm that guy. I'm a good shot, right? But when you think about the gun he chose, right, a Mauser, some guys actually take the action off of 50-year-old Mausers and use that action, meaning the bolt action part of it, and hook bull barrels to it and everything else. And they make very accurate guns out of them for competition. That's a thing, right? And as soon as I heard Mauser, I went, okay, now we're back. This is a guy that knows what he's doing. 200 yards, I can't imagine it was cheap glass. It had to be, he got some. So let's say he's able to do all of that from the internet. He still had to go out and practice, right? You cannot sight that gun in on YouTube. You need to go somewhere and sight it in. And like I said, if he put that gun on Charlie Kirk's nose and hit him in the jugular, he sighted it in pretty damn good. I don't think you could get that lucky.
Well, and let's talk about the fact that he posted online and said, I have a chance and an opportunity to take Charlie Kirk out. Like he actually stated that, and
right
ahead of time, right? So this goes back to that Tarasoff warning. I'll have people in my office as a psychologist, and I've had kids come in there and like, I'm probably going to kill someone. If I don't know who they're going to kill or they haven't identified the person, my response is to try to figure out like how serious that threat is and all of the things. But when you identify a person and you've said it out loud and you've put it into a public square, such as anywhere on any platform that you're talking about, and not to do anything about it, that to me is more disturbing than anything else, because we should be able to stop that.
I saw somewhere, and by the way, since I don't do politics, it's kind of weird that we're even having this conversation. People were saying somewhere online, it might have been Discourse, it might have been X, I don't know where, but they were saying, oh, something big's going to happen in 2 days. And get ready, something big's going to happen. It's coming. So apparently there were a lot of people that knew that this was coming. Did you hear this, or is this just something?
I did. And even like disturbing also was some of the footage that came out on that day, that 2 students were sitting there and saw him going across the rooftop, getting into position, and even stated in that video clip, they're like, oh, I wonder if that's the sniper to take him out. So,
Oh, really?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. So you have to listen in like on some of those clips. Like, to me, are we in a society where we just kind of like expect things to happen? It reminds me of the people that slow down to look at the car crash. Every
Right.
time, I tell my kids, I was like, Arizona, we got a lot of motorcycles and a lot of accidents. And I always tell my kids, do not look towards the accident, right? You don't know what
Right.
you're gonna see. You don't want to like be, but not today. Like the society today is, we're all like lining up to see what's going to happen. And that's like that dehumanization and that like that, we've got to really lean back into understanding how do we get people caring about each other again, regardless if we don't agree with what they're saying.
Well, I saw footage on the Trump thing last year where there were people literally saying, hey, there's a guy up there with a gun. They were pointing at the guy with the gun and nobody was doing anything, and we've never gotten any resolution on that.
Well, I do think that the head of Secret Service resigned after that. I do believe.
But I mean, did they know? I mean, someone goes, well, as soon as that guy shot, then a sniper took him out. It was like, okay, why didn't the sniper sees this guy pointing at the crowd with a gun? Why didn't the sniper shoot before then?
Mm-hmm.
That's always the question. Someone told him to stand down. Well, do we know that for real? Or is that just what people are saying? We don't know.
No, right.
Because they've never let us know. And it could be like the Kennedy thing. We may never know, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a crazy thing. We may never know.
Right. What we do know is that people are getting radicalized. What we do know is that we aren't holding people accountable. We do know that there is communities, that there are communities online that, facilitate some of this kind of like ideology that creates more of them. So we really have to, I think, as a society, figure out like what is that balance and how do we figure out how to slow that down and stop it, or lean into it with more understanding so that we're not just demonizing each other and we're actually coming to the table and understanding like the why, and how do we change that.
Yeah. Any final words, Lisa, before I let you go, or should we just make that the final word?
It can be. I mean, I guess my heart goes to, if you have children, grandchildren, whoever's in your life, take some time to have conversation, take some time to show them that there is an alternative. I raised my kids without social media. My daughter graduated as valedictorian. She's at Rice University. She's done really well in her life. Not just because she didn't have social media, but because I had balance in her life, right? You have a sport, you have a musical instrument, and you learn how to have social etiquette with others. And if you can do that with any child that you have exposure to in your lifetime, you will make better citizens. You will create a better future for our society as a whole.
Sam Houston Institute of Technology. That's where your daughter's at school. Sam Houston Institute. But you couldn't call it that because when you take those initials, it doesn't spell rice.
No, it does not. Yeah.
Yeah. So, by the way, I was offered a scholarship to Rice to play football. Trust me, it wasn't for my brain. And then I played for Tulane, who played against Rice. We beat them a couple of times, so that was good. Lisa, thank you for coming on. I know you're super busy. Please hang on because we have to wait for this to upload. So I'm sorry, you got to hang with me for a few more minutes. Folks, you know what to do. Oh, we were talking about coffee earlier in the show. If you buy coffee from purecoffeeclub.com, we will not stare at you blankly. But then again, you won't get a bad cup of coffee because we roast that bad boy fresh every week. All of my bags of coffee, we're roasting all the time. We, whether it's the honey process or the house, all of it, it goes from green beans to roasting. We let it off gas. It's put in a bag and it's sent to you that quickly. PureCoffeeClub.com. Go check it out at PureCoffeeClub.com. Lisa, where can people find you?
The best place to find me is AskLisa.com.
AskLisa.com. Go there. She will answer all of your questions. Lisa, once again, I can't thank you enough for being on. I know you're super busy. Folks, on behalf of Dr. Lisa Strohman, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living, and let's do it with a little more of Red Rider.